So we've come back into the city of Kyiv today. Some people might think that's crazy, but actually yesterday they announced that they were going to open humanitarian corridors and that the Russians were going to allow people to come in and or to leave at least. So we were able to get back in, but it's getting harder and harder to drive around this city because they're putting up barricades all over the place. We saw huge concrete barricades that they had put right in the middle of the freeway, and so there are all these serpentine things you have to drive through. Now here you can see that they are taking the sand out of the children's playground and using them to make sandbags with, and that's to add to those fortifications that they have been building just everywhere, on street corners, middle of streets, neighborhoods. There are guardsmen, police, and just civilians manning these barricades. And you can tell that they are really preparing for a big, big fight. They are not going to give up Kyiv easily. And I would imagine that what you've seen in Kharkiv and Kherson and Sumy and all these other cities that they have just been bombing mercilessly is going to happen here soon. Now, since we got here today, this is the university, by the way, Taras Shevchenko, and that giant red building is the university. Anyway, since we got here today into Kyiv, we have heard lots of air raid sirens. People don't really seem to pay much attention to them because of the really random nature of these bombings, or they're just shooting cruise missiles in here. And it appears to me that they're trying to hit a military, some kind of military target, but they're so inaccurate and imprecise that they really can't hit it. So what they're doing is just randomly sending these rockets in here, but not in large barrages yet. And they're not shelling with artillery yet. Artillery is when you need this thing. If a rocket hits you, this plate is not going to help you a whole lot. Or a helmet, is not going to help a whole lot because you're going to be obliterated if you're anywhere close to it. The shock wave alone will liquefy your insides. So there are lots of people that are still sleeping in bunkers and subway stations and train stations here, basements, but really most people have left. The only people who are still here, for the most part, are people who plan to fight and people who are supporting those who plan to fight, and journalists. And journalists might be the biggest number. I don't know. There are a lot of journalists here. We showed up at the hotel where we stayed just a couple days ago at the Ramada, and it was closed down. The Hilton has closed. The Hyatt is not taking any more guests. We called all sorts of hotels around here and were unable to find one until we found one at the Premier Palace right around the corner over here, which is a very fancy and expensive hotel that's owned by, you may have remember me mentioning this before, it's owned by a Russian oligarch, one of those, I believe, who was sanctioned by U.S. sanctions put on Russia. And they tell me that all of the, we're going to go down this way, all of the security guys there are attached to the hotel from the FSB. Looking at them, I would believe it. They all look like linebackers and very serious, no sense of humor guys, without a doubt. So we have heard some explosions. Like I said today, the air raid sirens have been going off now and then. The only place to get food is in the hotel, and they don't have room service or anything like that. It's like wartime meals. You go into the little meeting room and they have just a very limited menu, soup and spaghetti and things like that that you can order. And that's actually better than most of the places, most of the hotels here who just, you get what you get. They make a little buffet of sorts. Now, I'm going to walk this way. So, no, come on this side. Over here, over here. Yeah, because you have to be careful filming in the downtown area, filming the streets, because there's a lot of movement of military forces. And one thing we don't want to do is show any of that on video, because we don't want to give away the disposition, strength, troop numbers, movements, or anything like that of the Ukrainian forces. That's always a real concern when you are in wartime. Now, you may have heard that Kherson fell. Most people in America probably never heard of Kherson until just a few days ago. But it's a large city in the south, about 300,000 people. And it's important because it held a water canal that was shut off in 2014 that provided a lot of water to the people of Crimea. So when Crimea moved away, separated, whatever, they just shut the water off. So Russia now can turn that water back on. And it was a hard fight in Kherson. Some of the people that we're talking to down there, one of our previous fixers is down there. They say that the fight's not over yet. The Russians might control Kherson center, but they are still taking casualties and losses. Somewhere in the neighborhood, we've been told so far in this fight, the Russians have taken something like almost 6,000 casualties. That's dead and wounded. It's hard to tell whose numbers to trust, because when you hear any numbers, from one side they're going to be inflated and the other side they're going to be deflated. So I usually split the difference and figure that's about, closer to correct. But in this case, I think the Russians have taken big losses. I know the Ukrainians have taken some big losses as well, but the Ukrainians are also picking up abandoned Russian equipment. I'm talking tanks and self-propelled howitzers and artillery, big guns and things like that. And when they do that, they paint them, they put yellow all over them so they know that they're not enemy anymore. They put them on a trailer, and we saw several times today where there were trailers with these Russian military hardware on them, heading somewhere to get repainted and probably turned around and used against the Russians. So if they're able to repurpose all the stuff the Russians have abandoned, the Ukrainians might end up better off at the end of this war than they started, because the Russians are losing hundreds and hundreds of vehicles, aircraft, all kinds of stuff. So anyway, I'm back to the hotel. We got more lives to do. You can watch us on newsmaxtv.com at the top of each hour, and sometimes at the bottom of each hour. And so thanks for watching. I'm Chuck Holton. We'll see you. Cool. Look at that.